Are you in yet?
And then let's see.
Oh yeah, here we are. I just got it, Jay. Thank you. In progress.
Don, you have your hand up?
Oh, I don't know what.
Oh, okay, I wasn't sure if you were
I'm trying
working to make an announcement.
Hey, I can hear your speaker in mine. It's going mute.
There we are. Yeah, so Nina, you're also showing as not muted, along with Don. And Cheryl.
Hi, everybody.
Good afternoon.
All right, to write down who's here. Okay. I just sent Bill the link to the Zoom meeting, so he should be joining us in a minute. We might as well wait for him to join. Can everybody see the agenda okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Well,
I just sent it to Bill again as well.
oh, okay. I know, who knows where that email goes to, China, India, then back a couple of houses down, so.
Is he in yet? I think he's here.
Good afternoon.
There you are.
I'm here.
Okay.
I don't know. Some days, technology is great, and then there's other days like today. It's just baffling to me. So, but I finally got connected. Thank you very much, Susan, for sending it to me.
Sure, no worries.
For some reason, my iPad doesn't want to cooperate, so I got you connected through my phone. So I have no idea what it looks like. Probably, maybe I look like a giraffe or a zebra. So who knows?
It just says WF's iPhone.
Yeah.
So, well, why don't we start with homeowner comments and questions? We don't have too many homeowners on today, but if there are any, we can start with that. Okay, well, why don't we move on to updates from management and the board.
Okay. Dusty, you're online, is that right?
Yes, I am. And if you want me to share a different screen or put up your sighting analysis, I could do that.
Well, I think everybody received the sighting analysis, and that you can put it up on the screen. But very quickly, phase one continues. The project completion has been extended. It was March, April that we updated the project plan with Paul Reeves, and it's now May, June. So it's pushed back a couple of months, which is going to push back the beginning of phase two and beginning of phase three. The costs continue to exceed budget and contracted amount before change orders, and that's reflected on the information piece that I shared. Overall, the project is significantly greater than I think was ever anticipated. We're seeing the pictures that I've seen of that and the inspections that I've done. A lot more deterioration of the siding panels as well as the trim, and some of the fences are really pretty well shot. So the project continues on, and have asked Paul to give an update to the board at its January meeting. So we look forward to that. He'll recap 2023 and look forward into 2024. Any questions?
Yeah, I have, well, something if I don't raise it, I'm sure somebody else will, but I think we were all really surprised by Bob Browning's information about how Duratemp is a wood core based product. And we were thinking it was exactly like Hardy Board because that's how it had been presented to us. It had the same kind of lifespan. And so I thought I'd just bring that up just to talk about how we're going to handle it, think about it moving forward, and how it affects our finances, the budget stuff. I know Don was pretty concerned about that news. And I think my thought was that it most greatly affected the reserves, as it will shape Browning's view of how often or when the next siding project should, or how much it should, how much of the siding will have to be replaced at the next go round. Not so much the timing of it, because I think we'll have to continue to have the regular the phases of siding at the regular intervals. It's just that the degree to which we will have to replace siding that's put on this year will be affected by our assessment of its longevity.
Susan?
Yeah.
A correction there. I think we were pretty clear that this wasn't the same as Hardy Board. Hardy Board is basically a concrete base. The original idea was to put on LP Smart Side, and then it became unavailable, as I understand it. I wasn't on the board, so Bill can correct me if I'm making a misstatement here. And we ended up with Duratemp, which is a similar but somewhat different product. They both involve wood. Duratemp doesn't involve a sheet of plywood. It's wood fibers that have been tied together with resin, as opposed to a sheet of plywood that's been, treated for waterproofing on the exterior. So what we don't know is, does LP, even though both of them have 50-year warranties, does LP survive as well as Duratemp DuraTemp is what we used on the clubhouse. Hardy board, of course, we could never use because of the thickness of hardy board not matching up. It's apparently the most durable of all the products. But you know, it's one of those situations where we would have had to redo everything.
Right. We couldn't have hardy board and T111 on the same siding because there
You
would
have
be.
to do a whole elevation every
Yeah.
time, which although it was probably long-term the best answer, short-term it would have required a very large special assessment to generate enough cash to do it for the whole place. I mean, we could have done that 20 years ago, but there's no way I think the residents would have accepted the kind of special assessment that it would have necessitated.
Well, my comment on that, Will is the knowledge source here. Decisions on materials and that predate my coming on board. You know, my understanding was the DuraTemp is a good product. Its lifespan is probably something that you know, it's going to be wait and see. Now, in working with Browning, he did discussions there. He did extend out the interval to 12 years with intervening periodic, you know, maintenance and painting to maintain the residents and the siding. So I think these are some questions that we can certainly ask Paul Reeves to address in January to the board, and that can give us all better insights into what we've got.
Right. We did once do a 12-year cycle. Of course, we're going to have majority T111 and all the wood trim is still wood. So
Yep.
we did do a 12-year cycle 20 some years ago, and there was really substantial deterioration by the time we went to 12 years. So I don't know. We've now done 8s, 6s, and 12s, and it seems to be pretty much a linear change in cost.
Sure.
If we had majority DuraTemp, I would think that certainly would make a lot more sense. I don't know with the fact that we still have majority T111, if that makes sense or not. The board's going to have to decide.
Yeah. Good questions. And also, I think a good question to carry into 2024 as we look at the reserve study and have Browning on site and you know, better position ourselves for the future.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Browning has on his list to do some research into the DuraTemp.
Yep.
I'm sure. I don't know how much he would. If we had some compelling information to show him, he might listen to us. But I'm sure he'll do his due diligence. He's pretty good about that.
Well, the fact that he did the research, comparing the DuraTemp to the hardy board and determining that the DuraTemp does have wood fiber in it, resin embedded wood fiber. You know, tells me that he's on the right track there. I think he'll provide us some good guidance.
I do want to just kind of underline the fact that Will's right. We never really intended to go with the hardy board, the LP, with the stuff that we put on the clubhouse. That we were looking at that Smart Side, and I'd kind of forgotten about that. And Smart Side was the same product, so it wasn't as though, you know, we were duped by anything or overlooked something. It's just that he was comparing it to
Well, he
hardy
was-
board, which
he
we
was
never really
comparing it-
considered
He was
using.
comparing it to LP, the difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
he actually focused on the difference between an LP. The research I've done seems to indicate that they're very similar, but until we actually get some experience with them, I don't know. Apparently, a big issue with Duratemp is that it does get painted with regularity.
It gets
What's
painted with
regularity?
regularity?
But yeah, that your paint cycle is, you stay on your paint cycle, that if you slip on your paint cycle, it becomes more vulnerable.
Mm.
Yeah,
Well,
And
we're
that
gonna
was one of
have
the
to stick with our paint cycle because we'll be replacing other boards in the meantime too that weren't replaced in the past phase, so.
yeah, that was one of the things, Susan, that Bob iterated was that, we maintain our paint cycle. And in that process, of course, as you find that you have deterioration, you're always doing some maintenance, and you would take care of that during your periodic paint cycles. So it's not that you're just putting it up and letting it sit. You are looking at it on a periodic basis as you go through the paint cycle.
Yeah, good point.
I think we're getting beyond the finance committee's decisions here, but I noticed that Bob's got an 8-year paint cycle and a 12-year siding cycle. Maybe I'm dense, but I don't see how that's gonna mesh.
Well, I think we talked to him about that, Will. I think that came up and he said, oh, well, okay, I can put a 12-year cycle and then put some in-between touch-up things, didn't he?
He's got the touch up in there, but he's still got an 8-year cycle the last, I don't know, maybe he's changed it.
Well, we can, let's pick that up in the 2020, as we work and work with him in developing the 2024 reserve study. These are questions that let's make note and follow with him on that, because I think that's an important thing.
I think those are things we need to discuss with our contractor and with our oversight, because Bob,
I'll put
it's
that
really
on.
not Bob's expertise.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll just put that on our running list of questions to ask about the reserves.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff is out of our range of expertise, but if we catch inconsistencies, I think that's still helpful.
Well, I think that's an important thing, is that we ask questions, and sometimes we don't know what the right questions are to ask. But that's why the expertise of Bob can help us with that. And as to the purview of the finance committee, I do not have the problem with asking questions because it does affect finances, and some discussion like this also provokes a few other questions. So it's good. If I can move on to landscape. I just remind people that in 2014, the board of directors adopted a policy, if you will, regarding grounds reserve allocations to provide for plant replacements, ground cover replacements, irrigation improvements, replacement of broken irrigation lines, tree health, removals, replacements, pruning, and other treatments such for beetles and aphids and fruit prevention, particularly on the ambers. And these are, you might think of them as maintenance expenses, but apparently, they were able to make the decision that these things would be paid for from the reserves, as they are to maintaining, one of the most valuable assets that we have as a community, and that's our grounds. And so we need to be cautious as we talk about dealing with our reserves for grounds, and that includes landscape as well as trees.
Cautious, Bill? You want to just elaborate on that?
Well, I think I say cautious is, you can't just go and slash something. As somebody said, reduce it by 50%, and then say, wait a minute, we can't just, arbitrarily go and reduce landscape by 50% because we're not doing the maintenance that we need to be doing from the reserves. That's what I say.
Oh, gotcha.
Can I be heard or am I on mute?
Yeah, you're unmuted, Don. Go ahead.
Just picking up on that, Bill, the list of things that you read there, I think we need to be cognizant of what is maintenance and to maintain our grounds and what is, we'll call it refurbishment. And the refurbishment is something different. And that's where dollars can be saved more so than anything in the maintenance.
Yeah, I think this is one that we should we go to the grounds committee and ask grounds committee to be, thoughtful in their approaches and recommendations to the board for actions, and that's beyond the finance committee. But I just mentioned that, so we have a little bit better
beyond the
balance.
finance committee. Did you say?
As to landscape determinations.
Okay.
Well, the landscape committee had an opportunity to, for the maintenance of our trees, to define things as like things
Nina,
that
you're
are
kind
gonna
of,
be.
excuse me, sorry, you're kind of echoing.
So
Yeah.
I think
Hang on a second.
That's my problem.
Oh, okay. All
somebody
right,
has
Don,
that up
maybe
on
you
the
mute
screen.
and then
Okay.
Nina
Is this
won't
better?
echo.
Is this better?
A little bit. Maybe Don, if you mute, then Nina won't be echoing. I don't think Don muted yet, Nina. There you go.
Is this better?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so if you're still not muted.
Oh, you're
If I
you're
was,
fine.
hang on just one second. Just give me a second. I'll fix
good.
this.
You're perfect.
Okay. The grounds committee
Absolutely.
has an opportunity this past year to decide recommendations, especially for the trees, with things that needed to be done immediately, things that could have waited, and things that could really have waited. So there were 3 categories, A, B, and C. And it turns out that we decided somehow the grounds committee and the board approved all of those instead of panning those out over a little bit of time, which would all came straight from our reserves. And that's an opportunity for us in the future to not have to do everything at once. I mean, I think we should take those recommendations.
That's a really good observation, Nina, and I will share that with the board, and I'll share that with the grounds liaison, and thank you for that.
Yeah, so there's opportunities within that budget, and I also think that the line item that is under irrigation, and it also has renovation under it, that appears as if it's a renovation of irrigation and not plants. Those things should be separated out and be cleanly put into the Browning report and the reserve study, so that everyone understands exactly what those line items are, because it's really confusing.
That's another great question. My first experience with the reserve study and I couldn't agree with you more that there needs to be greater definition. And I think that as we look at going into 2024 and we look at that reserve, say that's exactly one of the things that we should be doing. And I think Browning will assist us with that.
Yeah, it's just mishmashed together, and it's just not clean.
It's a bucket. It's a bucket. So it's good.
I can put that on our running list of things to ask.
Okay.
On the reserve.
Yeah, that's great. That's
so
great.
Those are the opportunities that I'm seeing that, does this have to be done right now, or can it wait? Are things that we should be asking while we're trying to get through the siding project. It's going to be a really expensive thing, and it should be our top priority. That's how I see it.
There is a distinct linkage between restoration, plant restoration, and irrigation, because the two need to be done in conjunction with each other. Because when you change the plantings, then you suddenly have this problem of having the appropriate irrigation structure. So that,
Well, I guess the question I also have with this, Will, is that we have this new bill that's come up, AB, I can't think, it is 17 something, 1572 or something. And that has to deal with our turf and our lawns. And we're spending a lot of money redoing our gardens right now and our shrubs. And we should be really working with the state and finding out if the state and or city has money that we can tap into and go with their guidelines so that we are not caught short on this project.
yeah, we have managed in the past to get, you know, on at least three occasions I'm aware of, to get grants. I don't know if there are any more grants available or not, but we may decide, we may find we have to take out most of our lawn if the bill stays active and isn't modified in any way for HOAs. And if it means that we have to completely replumb everything for non-potable water and bring in a source of non-potable water for all that grass, it may be better to get rid of the grass.
Well, if we
I
get
think
rid of the
those are
grass and we,
Oh, sorry.
if we get rid of the grass and we put in a drought tolerant, let's say ground cover in some of these places, I think you can use potable water for that.
Yeah,
So we wouldn't have to redo it. We'd just have to get rid of some of the grass and just put in some kind of a ground cover that would spread pretty quickly.
that's essentially what I was saying, is that maybe
Yeah.
the most viable option rather than replumbing to.
Well, we should be looking at those things. In my mind, we should be looking at those things instead of redoing some of the shrubbery we're doing right now.
Well,
Well, I
This
think
is
that
going to bite us.
I just want to kind of make sure that, I mean, I think grounds is going to do a lot of that work, or you know, the board will assign some ad hoc committee to look into the implications there. I think there's a lot that we can do to look
Well, we can
into.
go, we're looking for money.
Exactly. Like we can look into options for, because I'm sure that grants and things like that are just beginning to come out. And there may be other things that we can help the board identify as possibilities. But, you know, decisions about replacing turf, that only becomes our business when we find out, when we look at different options and cost related to them. And that's where
of course.
Yep. Let's Susan, I'd ask that you put this on the follow list, and I will bring it to the board's attention that, you know, we're looking for the grounds to provide direction and analysis to opportunities here. So
Yeah, we're not
that's great.
We're not going to be alone in this problem. There are going to be a lot of people
Yeah.
grapple with this
Yeah.
problem. A lot of HOAs. I think, you know, if we
Our
go,
neighbors.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if we go, my guess is that in the association, you're going to start getting people coming forth saying, you know, these are options that people are looking at, because most people don't have a source of non-potable water. You know,
Exactly.
they'd have to develop it somehow. It's not like, you know, it's running, you know, in a separate set of lines and you can just tap into it.
Well, it's a lot easier to do a non-potable water if you're an individual house, because you can,
Right.
you know, you can divert, but it's not possible in a situation like this.
Right. And it may well be that results in lobbying the legislature to, you know, to alter the statute, but well, I think that's where management needs to coordinate, stay on top of the association, because all the HOAs are going to be grappling with this.
Yeah, Dusty,
Exactly.
maybe you could check back with First Service and just see if they've got any like direction, you know, to HOAs about lobbying efforts or the thoughts about moving forward with this.
Of course, we get updates, you know, from that kind of, from a legal standpoint on those bills as well. And I pass those updates on to the board as I receive them.
Well, if there's anything that you think is also would be helpful to the finance committee, we'd love for you to pass it down to us, if that's okay with you, Bill.
Oh, that's fine. The more information sharing that we have, I think is good, and that provokes dialogue and good consensus. So that's great. So moving on to the other item for update on flood insurance. In 2024, it is the board's intent to look at flood insurance and the questions that have been raised surrounding flood insurance as we go forward. And I just remind people that was in February, I think it was in February of this year, we had an insurance forum, and there was a YouTube video of it, and it was very informative on insurance and flood insurance, and was helpful. But the question's been raised, and the board's attending to that, and we'll be looking in 2024 for direction and making a determination on what we want to do with flood insurance. There's a pot full of issues associated with that. But Dusty, do you have anything else you wanted to add on flood insurance?
Yeah, I did reach out to Russo, and two things as it pertains to the renewal premium for the flood insurance policy. We've been assisting Russo's, had some questions on several units that they're trying to assess, which may or may not need to be rewritten. This has to do with homes changing ownership, and they need additional information. We've been trying to assist them with getting that additional information. So depending on those units that they're waiting for confirmation on and they're looking into, we may or may not see a favorable reduction in what we budgeted for 2024. We're waiting for those numbers to come in and working with Russo Insurance on that. Another update, just so kind of it's out there because it's kind of been rumored back and forth. Russo Insurance did sell their company. It's now been acquired by a company called Labar Oxney. It's a very, very big company. It won't change or affect Nepenthe's insurance policy with farmers. So it's just kind of going to be business as usual, but that update is just, kind of important to know. So that is all I had on the flood insurance. There was one question on the last meeting regarding why Nepenthe was listed as a lost payee. And I got just a quick brief answer on that. It's because the association is responsible to pay the premium. That's the only reason why they're listed. So for flood insurance, that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Does anybody have any questions about anything? Flood insurance, landscaping, siding, painting? No? Okay. No.
Susan, just one other comment. On behalf of the board and that, thank you all, the finance committee, for your contributions. Do appreciate it, and I sincerely appreciate your comments and support. So thank you.
Okay, moving on.
I had some questions on the tennis courts. Are those
Sure.
next, or do we just skip them, or?
We can talk about, we can talk about that. That's kind of my running list that I'm going to add things to, but if you have something you want to mention about it, go ahead.
Well, I think the Elmhurst courts aren't used very much, and I don't know, is there an opportunity for us to make some money and maybe have offer those out for people to give lessons on?
The Elmhurst courts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not,
they're just never used. So why wouldn't we,
it's,
make
there's some difficulty with Elmhurst courts. They didn't grade them properly when they resurfaced them, like, I don't know, it must be 10 years or so ago now. So, like in the corner, the drainage is really bad. There's like a dip and there's like a pool of water there. And people will play on that right hand court on the north side, because it's not as terrible as the one on the south side. But I think the board is we're not going to move forward with resealing it or anything, because nobody will reseal it, because it's, impossible to with the whole lumpy grading thing. So I think they're kind of putting off deciding what to do about it. And as far as using it for lessons, I think it's in the bylaws that people can't give lessons on the courts. So, they could, I don't know how the board handles that kind of thing, but.
it just feels like they're sitting there and we could maybe have a little income out of it. That's all.
Yeah.
That's an interesting concept. Dusty, can you check on the bylaws with that?
Sure, I can check into that.
I don't know if
Yeah.
it's in the bylaws or it was a addition to the
In the
policies or something.
CCNRs, it's in the CC.
Yeah, there's some policy maybe.
Somewhere.
It really becomes an issue if you're taking away an amenity that's already listed as an amenity that we have here in the association in the governing documents.
It's not taking
Repurposing
it
it
away.
Yeah, and I was just pointing out that's the only issue that we would have. The rest would just be, a community decision or a board decision on what they wanted to use those courts for. And as long as we were staying within, civil code guidelines and everything else, then it would be a possibility.
They aren't in very high demand, I can tell you, having watched them for years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we could put them to use somehow.
We tried to figure out how to generate income by possibly using them as a building site, but it just wasn't practical to do.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, if Dusty kind of moves forward with checking into that, and yeah, I'm not sure where. It could only be a income for us if we charged people for like license fees for giving lessons there or something like that.
Well, it could be nominal, but it would still be,
Yeah.
I get that it's not a huge source of income.
Hey,
Yeah.
you could turn it into $1 a bounce.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Okay. Let's see. Shall we move on to the old business then? And Bill, you had an update on the investments. I know you sent it around.
Yes. You'll recall, we picked up that we had some funds that were not reinvested. Well, those funds have been reinvested, etc. And First Services has arranged to not reimburse us, but to pay us for the lost investment income. It was roughly a little over $22,000. And I think it's been should have been credited to our accounts here within the last couple of weeks. I asked Dusty to check on that, and I don't know if she's had the opportunity to, but the whole thing came down to a clerical error between Morgan Stanley and First Services, and I think it happened to Morgan Stanley when we updated the signature cards or authorized signers on the accounts with Morgan Stanley, that somehow our cash manager with First Services Finance was not included, and therefore they didn't get notice. And funds didn't get reinvested, but we've had discussions with, I've had discussions with Morgan Stanley and with Carla at First Service Financial, and we've got things straight. And I'm now also watching the transactions as they go through. So pleased to say we had a good outcome on that, and kudos to First Services for stepping up.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay. Now for new business. I'm wondering, Will, do you want to talk about the need for a seminar on financials in the next year? And then I wonder also if we want to talk about this whole, like, the percent funded stuff.
Well, we've lost Tara, have we?
No, she's right there.
I'm here.
She's not showing on my list here, okay.
She's
That's
so
unfortunate.
quiet.
She disappeared.
I'm very much here.
Great job last time. It just seems to me we've had a substantial increase in monthly assessment. I thought it would generate more of a stir than it seems to have so far, but it's been my experience, particularly with regard to the reserve fund. People simply don't understand how a reserve fund works. They keep I ran as Susan was exercising this morning, I ran this past her that, an analogy is that a figure on the reserve fund is an estimated projection of cost. It's not an allocation to spend. It may turn into an allocation to spend, but when you put down, use something very simple, like let's say the refrigerator in the kitchen, and we say, okay, in 2030, we're going to have to replace the refrigerator in the kitchen, and it's going to cost, I don't know, $2,500. That's not a decision to buy a refrigerator in 2030. It's an estimate that the refrigerator we have will have terminated its useful life and have to be replaced. It may die a year early, it may die 5 years late. But postponing the expenditure for 1 year is not the equivalent of cutting that much out of a yearly budget. Since it's a 30-year budget, it's extrapolated over an extended period of time. And most people have a hard time grappling with that, with the idea that this is a series of projections of future costs. And then what the percent funded means also. So it seems to me that we're never going to get the majority of people to show up, but at least those people who are concerned, or there seems to be a certain number that think there's some nefarious scheme afoot to spend money willfully. It would be helpful to do a seminar again to explain, what are our costs, where do they come from, how does a reserve, what's the difference in a reserve budget and a yearly operating budget, and how does expenditure in one versus the other affect us differently.
Well, how has it been dealt with historically when a reserve budget is then settled on? I understand what you're saying and how the reserve accrues for the future, but at the same time, there is that number for next year is used as a baseline for expenditures.
It is sometimes by the board. I have heard some individuals on the board say, well, we have $200,000 in that account. Frankly, that's something that nobody should ever say, because it's not like we have $200,000 in that account. We estimated that our expenditures this year would be $200,000. You have to decide whether the expenditure is justified or not justified. it's not like the money's gonna go away at the end of the year if you don't spend it. It's gonna roll over into the next year and benefit you. So part of it is educating new boards as they come on.
Well, I think one of the things that whoever was there at the last board meeting, at the second homeowners, after the board had passed the reserve budget or reserve funding, I stood up and reminded folks that just because that had been passed didn't mean that it needed to be spent.
No, it doesn't. It's not a promise to spend. It's not like saying the city of Sacramento saying, okay, we've allocated $4 million to deal with homelessness next year, and we're going to spend $4 million next year.
And the word is, or the numbers were, that the percent funded in 2024 would fall down to 20 or 48.5%, correct?
I haven't looked at the final on this year's, on 2024's budget, so I don't know where, I
Well,
mean, we decided, you
the
know.
last I had available was revision 4 from Browning that,
I think that's right. I think it said 48%. And Don, do you understand what goes into that percent funded
well,
amount?
just let's not go there at this moment, Susan, okay?
Okay, I'm
Let's-
not sure where you're going with it, so I'm
I left a couple of pages. Dusty, could you put those up on the screen, please? You'll all recognize that page. And off of that page, let's scan all the way down to the bottom if you can.
Don, you're cutting out.
There you go. So those total numbers at the bottom. Next page, if you would, please. So starting off with those, you need to run it up a little bit or further. Okay. The column 21 million, that number, the 10 million below it, that number are straight off of that previous page. And from those numbers is where the 48.5% came from. And what I asked the board for was, give me the number that it would have to be in order to raise that percent funded from 48 to 60 or 65%. As in the email that I sent out, even First Service, it's not a First Service recommendation. They call it experts offer that 70% is a good number. And I understand we'd been up to 80, 84%, which is wonderful. But that's where that 48% comes from. Now, if we go back to the right-hand columns and look at just the 60 and 65% that nope, back to the, that's it. The 60 and 65%, those arrows on there are just saying how and where those numbers came from.
Don, I'm wondering why are we talking about this?
Because that page, the first page now, and maybe I don't understand, but I started off by saying there are people that look at that fund as a budget. And some people will say that we have that much money to spend during next year. And as Will says, and as you're trying to tell me, that's not the way it really works. I understand that, but people are coming up with that 48.5% there. And I think that's one of the things we have to deal with, and how what dollars are being used to get to that 48%.
Oh, what that 48% means is that the amount of money we have in the bank, if you will, our assets, if we had to replace every single thing we have, we could only, if everything disappeared,
Yes.
simultaneously.
Well, it's not
And-
exactly quite right though, Will, is it? Because you also have to take into account the projected life on each asset, but it takes into account the projected life on each asset. So right now, that $10 million represents almost half of what it would cost to replace everything
Right.
at the point where it needs to be replaced right now.
And that percentage has fallen from 84% or whatever.
Right. Right. And that's perfectly logical if you realize that we are at the end of the extended life on siding. So our siding costs, it's like about 100% of what it costs to replace the siding. And siding is one of the most expensive things in the reserves. So you see,
in that
when we get
that
to the
reserve,
end-
in that revision 4 document on Dusty, if you can actually go to page 103 on that document, that 48% continues to fall in the upcoming
Yes,
5
it
years.
does. It continues to fall because we're still at the bottom of the cycle. Until we haven't even gotten through the first third of our siding cycle. So we're bearing the brunt. This is like one of the low spots in the reserve budget across 30 years.
And
So we expect to be down low at this point in time. Do you
The
see
board
what
has-
I mean?
the board.
I
So-
agree with that, Susan, but at the same time, we are also spending a lot on our landscape that is kind of a choice to spend at the moment that we could push off a little and not have it drop so far, because that is also a massive expense. And I'm not talking about the mow and blow and the maintenance day to day. There are things that we could do in the landscape that would also reduce that slightly over time.
Yeah, there absolutely is. And and the thing is that I think that part, the deciding what to include and what to budget for, is not in our little bailiwick. That's a board decision, and they're
But we
looking
could
out.
we could make recommendations.
Well, we could, but I mean, at the same time, we also have to think about and the board has to think about how landscape fits into, the future water use and everything else. So everything is sort of coming together at a particular point, and we just have to sort of be there to support the board and help them to make good decisions. It's as they relate to finance. I think that you're absolutely right about that, but I just want to make clear that the way our reserve fund is structured, we're trying to cover those very lowest spots. We're using that threshold funding to make sure that we have.
That was the board's decision to go to threshold funding. And frankly, one of the reasons past boards went to that decision is because they were resistant to putting as much money into reserves as it would have called for to keep percent funded up around 60%. I mean, we've had a couple of budgets now in which the board actually went under what Browning recommended. And that's one of the reasons that number has fallen. So
Exactly.
you either have to pony up more money, or you have to decide something that you can remove that isn't just going to postpone the cost 1 year. It's literally going to change the cost. And and the board's got to decide. We can tell them where the costs are, but they've got to decide whether maintenance of the quality of the grounds, which requires these various restorations, is worth it or not. I mean, we got particularly hit hard because of the restoration from all that tree, losing all those trees this year, plus the siding. And it hit us pretty hard. I know that putting for instance, a restoration project off for a year is not going to give you much bang for your buck in the reserve budget, because it's a 30-year budget. If you just don't ever do it, it'll give you bang for your buck. And then, you just say, well, we'll live with the thing the way it is.
I just feel like there's a lot we don't know too, about the nature of how the landscape funds are going to be spent. I mean, they did reduce the cost. They have this 3 or 4 year plan to follow along with painting and siding and do some, you know, kind of rethinking of the landscape at the same time, hopefully to put off or to reduce costs in the future. But because we haven't seen the result of that in the budget. And that's the thing I think that's a little bit frustrating.
Well,
You know?
I've heard with regard to that, Susan, it's touted that, we cut $720,000 of that out of that area. But it turned around and re-spent all but about 150,000 of that on other items. So it really wasn't a cut of 720. We have to be careful in seeing the whole picture.
Well,
I
we
don't
have to
think
be
it's a
careful.
case of people not understanding how the reserves work. I think it's a case of people having different perspectives of what we could do to make it different. Let me just say it that way. I think people understand the reserves, at least on this team, but I think we all have different perspectives on how this could work differently.
Yeah. Well, it's mainly a question of priorities, you know.
It is.
Bingo.
And is it a priority? I would say, I think the grounds are in better shape than they have been in years, which is amazing considering the fact that the grounds, like everything else, are aging. It's not like they're getting any younger. So they do look surprisingly good for the age of this place, and they seem to be a very high priority among residents. So I don't know, at the end of the day, it comes down to a resident saying, well, I'd rather save $25 a month and not have the restoration over there, or I'd rather have the restoration over there and spend the $25 a month. And that's why, you elect the board to try to balance those things out.
Tara.
Well, so I guess, Tara, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I think these are great suggestions, but I think that this is more things that maybe should be suggested to the board by the homeowners or the committees themselves. And one of the things that I could, I guess, make an action on is that the finance committee suggests to the board that they direct the landscape committee to look at where there's opportunities and alternatives. I think that we will find a mixed bag with the homeowners. It's been the removal of the trees over by the tennis court. Some people were concerned that they were providing shade and coverage, yet they were aged, they were not well shaped, they needed to go. I do recall on, I can't remember what the Vanderbilt, they had, there was the issue where the landscaping was pulled out and rock put in. And that would have resulted in a lot of savings with regards to watering and plant maintenance. However, that was met with a lot of resistance from the individuals that thought it did not match what the vibe of the community was. So it's a tough balance, but I think that probably the best suggestion would be to invite the board to have the landscape committee look at where the expenses are and provide opportunities and alternatives that then can go out and get either bids or information on what the costs are, come to the finance committee, or we can evaluate and see whether or not they've considered all the options. Like, if we're going to cut this, what is the impact on water? Have they considered that? So that's Tara's 2 cents.
We've not made any, have we made any kind of a decision on whether it's worth scheduling a seminar?
Yeah, that's where I was going back to. I mean, that's what led us down this path of
Like maybe
discussion.
late January or somewhere in there, early February.
Everybody's
And
looking at you, Tara.
what would the seminar include, Will?
Well, the last time we did it, basically it included an explanation. It's basically a chance to explain the structure of our finances. The vast majority of people in here do not track either the board or the finance committee. And so it's a chance to explain to people, where are the expenses? Why are those expenses? What's a reserve fund? How does it differ from an operating fund? And then give people a chance to have input. But the problem is it's hard to have input if you don't understand the structure and the operations in the
But
first.
I think part of that is the drop from 84 to 48 and projected lower than that. Part of that seminar has to be able to provide comfort to those homeowners, those in attendance and stuff, some level of comfort that 48% or 36 the following year and stuff is not a red flag, and what's the risk level with it?
Don, do you feel like you understand now why it's 48%? Is that pretty clear? And are you concerned about it?
I'm concerned about managing a budget. And one of the things that Nina's brought up is some of the things going on with grounds. I'm most familiar with that area. But you need to have the understanding of the long term. And I think if you went out however long the siding project is supposed to take, another 3 years or 5 years or whatever it is, you've got to run this thing out beyond that to show the funding coming back up again. It doesn't need to be real numbers. It doesn't need to be these numbers. It needs to be an example of showing how and how that would work.
Well, the place to go is the bar graph in the reserve study, because that's the one that tracks exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there is a point out there several years where it goes pretty low. When roofing kicks in again, one of the things about this association, because we do roofing and siding and painting, is that when it hits us big.
Yeah.
So I think the seminar is a good idea. I'm just, we need to be careful and make sure that we present and convey the right information and the right ideas.
I thought Tard did a superb job last time. I don't know if she's trying to duck it this time, but I was very impressed.
Dawn, I don't know, were you able to either see the slide deck or did you attend that seminar? It would have been, I think, like 2 or 3 years ago.
I don't think I was there.
Okay, would you?
Whatever came up, I know I had intended to be, but whatever came up, I don't think.
That's okay. Would it be helpful? I would love to be able to get your input. The slide deck that I had presented last time, maybe I could send that over to you and maybe you can take a look at it and see if you find it that it would be helpful to communicate that. I can update the slides, obviously, and I feel comfortable that I can explain the reserves.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Tara, would you also send it to me?
Yes. Does anybody else want to see it? Carol or Nina?
Sure, of course. Thank you.
Dusty. She's all, oh yes.
Just
that's what
everybody wants it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. It is. So again, it is outdated, but I absolutely can go ahead and just update it. That's not a problem.
And I'm just writing down that you're agreeing to give the seminar, and I'll be a supporter, and I'll even like take you for dinner afterwards.
Okay, folks, this is being recorded. I heard I get dinner out of this, and I'm hoping it's a restaurant of my choice. I'm kidding.
And I heard Susan saying she's wearing your cheerleading outfit.
Oh,
Agreed at least to anchor it. Let's say that.
well, we could sell tickets and get some additional revenue from this, right? If we have Susan show up in the cheerleading outfit. Yes, I can go ahead and do that. Fortunately, I'm not getting married this January, so I will be available.
That's great.
And you're not having surgery or anything else?
No, and I should be able to have a little bit more use of the arm. So
Perfect.
yeah, 50 has not been good to me for several years.
Well, so maybe Bill, do you and Dusty, do you want to get together with Tara and identify a time that's good for her and that fits in with our schedule?
Absolutely.
You could do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Dusty, you can coordinate that, please.
Yes.
Just a quick clarifying question. When we talk about a seminar on financial training, are we talking about just for the finance committee, or are we talking about making this an open? Okay.
Open, available to all homeowners. I believe last time we did it, I thought it was on a Sunday. So if we can predict the weather and pick the crappiest weather day, we would be available via Zoom. For some reason, I think we did it pre-COVID last time. So I guess it has been a
No, there
while.
was one here in the clubhouse.
Yes,
Yeah.
that, Audrey,
Aubrey did it.
sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
And then you did it the year before. Yeah.
And
Okay.
just don't conflict with the 49ers game.
Well,
Noted.
yeah, good point. Well,
We'll do it in between, the weekend, the pause between the playoffs and Super Bowl.
Yeah, something
that's
like
why you and Dusty will coordinate the date. Bill.
Just don't make it super.
that.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we could always add some spirits, and that, and certainly contribute to the conversation. I expect so. Oh well.
Money and drugs don't
digress.
work very well together.
Pre-game.
Okay, let's see. Shall we move on to October financials? Anybody have any questions? Dusty, is there anything that you wanted to say about the financials?
Not about the financials per se, because I'm still, kind of getting familiar with our, reaching out to our staff accountant when I have questions, and just kind of getting into the groove of reading them and knowing who to go to for questions, and kind of getting into a groove on that. And that also includes the reserve tracker as well. Just to give everybody an update on kind of where I'm at as far as my level of involvement. I'm now receiving, coding, monitoring, and approving all the operating and reserve expenses. There's quite a process when it comes to reserve expenses. So I've taken over that process. Andy, of course, still has access to kind of oversee, and she's made herself available for questions and assistance. So that's all going well. The only process that I haven't been fully integrated on is updating the reserve tracker, which is why Andy is still making those updates, but we're going to be working on that. And then that's kind of the last piece. I'll be fully integrated in those processes.
Okay, that's great.
So if anybody has any questions pertaining to the October financials, I'm happy to take those down and get an answer for you on those.
I noticed in the reserve tracker that there didn't have any of the leaf and the pending file, the leaf pickup. I think it's around 30 grand a year. I don't know how much is going to hit in this year, but there didn't seem to be any projection in the pending for the leaf pickup. That was the only thing I noticed this time.
Okay, I'll look into that.
Mm-hmm. And we should be having some pretty big Carson contracts coming in for the trees. I don't know if those they could get billed in December. And I don't know, did the December things get pushed off to January?
There are a few that are going through the reserve process right now that are you'll see hit the tracker soon.
Okay.
Can I ask, I don't, the leaf blowing, is that reserves or is that operating?
Leaf pickup, I think she was talking about leaf pickup is in reserves, but the leaf blowing is in
Thank you.
off.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, but there's a special $10,000 for 3 months in a row that is specifically for the leaf season and the excess leaves they pick up. It's around the same time. It's not, it's in addition to the normal mow and blow. Let me say it that way.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. But I think it's reserves.
Right. I agree. I think it's reserves.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a couple of questions. Dusty, I think I CC'd you on the email that I sent back to Andy, about the reserve tracker? Just a couple little inconsistencies, questions. But it looks a lot better to me than last month. So I'm glad they figured out whatever needed to be recoded.
Yes, and we're working on tightening that up and making sure that when we create those reserve expense authorization forms, that we have 2 board members that have to sign before it goes through the next step in the process, that we're catching any mistakes on those forms and we don't need to do a recode, which kind of confuses the whole process when it makes it to the tracker.
Oh, gotcha.
So we're trying to be more mindful of tightening up, you know, making sure there's no mistakes as far as coding. Because when you do have to do a recode, it does confuse things quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Does anybody have any other questions about the operations or reserve financials? Any homeowner questions or comments? Well, then let's talk about the next meeting, because our next meeting is on December 25th, which is a very bad day for a finance committee meeting.
I'm not coming.
And Nina, I'm going to be out of town that week.
I don't
Your
want
garage
to.
door before you leave.
I know. I've got to get one of those darn like code things, like, you know, the little code pad things.
Susan, if you call me, I can tell you about mine. I got it as Wi-Fi because my Arlo picked up a guy rooting around in my garage because I forgot to shut it one night. Didn't take anything miraculously. And I have like a $2,500 bike that was sitting in there.
Whoa. Whoa. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put that in my notes.
You know where to
Not-
find me.
Yes. Right. Okay. So, do we want to change the meeting date, or do you want to cancel the meeting in December altogether? What's everyone's preference?
So I have no preference. I just know that if we bump it out a week, then we're talking New Year's Day. So
Right. So we
it's the
might as well.
18th, but I also don't know what pressure that puts on Dusty to get her stuff done as well.
Well, the board is meeting in December. I don't know historically if Nepenthe committees have met in December. Is December usually a quiet month, or does it vary just depending on what's going on in the community?
Well, January is the really busy month where there's a lot to talk about. I mean, December, it's November financials. So January, we're really looking at the end of the year performance. And then we'll be starting in with Bob Browning in earnest, starting in January.
I would suggest we just not meet in December and meet in January.
Would it be helpful to have the financials just emailed to us, and if we have questions, just kind of work it around that way? Because although yes, December gives us the full year, it's a good idea to let us know, and you know, if there's anything that pops up crazy in you know, during the time frame in November, just might be helpful.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dusty.
That's okay.
That makes great sense.
Yeah, I agree.
And any other things that come up, you know, anything that you want to like get on the agenda for January, any kind of questions, you know, feel free to email around. I think we can do that. Okay. We will cancel December meeting, and the next meeting then will be, let's see. The next meeting will be 1, 2, 3, 4, the 22nd of January. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Yeah, and have a happy holiday, everybody.
Yeah. Yes, happy holidays to everybody.
Okay.
Okay, well, I think we should adjourn. It's 5:45 and thanks, everybody. Good meeting. Thanks for your time.
Happy holidays. Bye.
Happy
Bye.
holidays. Thank you.
Bye.